Hi, everybody. I started this a couple seconds early just to make sure that everyone has a chance to get here. So we're going to get started in maybe a minute and 30 seconds or so. I'm just going to wait for everybody to make their way in. I see a lot of familiar faces, so hi, everybody. I'm going to get started in like 30 seconds. I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to get here. Okay, I think we should get started because it's 12:01 and this is being recorded. So anyone that comes in a little late will still have access to the recording afterwards. So hi everybody, my name is Sophie and I'm part of the customer success team here at Umapped. We're again so happy that you've registered and joined us for our summer school series, and we thank you for taking the time to join us today for part 3 of this 5-part series. Each week for the month of July, we'll build on what we've learned during the previous sessions, and at the end of this month, you'll walk away with the confidence that you are leveraging all of Umapped's functionality to streamline your workflow and meet your business and customer needs, and content-rich profiles, templates, and trips so that you're ready to inspire your clients as they dream and plan for future travel. During today's session, we'll be demonstrating how to create and manage content in your trip publisher library, how to add content into your trip, how to save content from your past trips to your library. Adding content to trips gives your travelers a truly unique experience. So we'll be going really into all of that today. And we'll also provide details on how you can take advantage of our one-time CSV upload option for all of your existing documents. As always, we'll leave some time for a Q&A at the end of today's session, but joining me, like always, is my colleague Barry from the customer success team. So feel free to leave your questions as we go in the Q&A section, and Barry will respond to you as we go. If it's something that requires a little bit of a demonstration, he might wait and then I'll answer it later on, but feel free to leave your comments as we go. There is somebody taking care of that. So additionally, if by any chance you're still new to Umapped, I want to make sure that you all know how to access your complimentary trial. From our website, which is umapped.com, click on the sign up button in the top right corner, and then complete the trial request form. Once your trial account has been set up, a member of our customer success team will send you a confirmation email with your account credentials and login instructions. All right, so with that, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is what exactly is the library. So your library is where you can create, save, and store content. When we say content, this can include destination information, important travel documentation, company documentation, and more. Essentially, any information you need to include in your client's trips, think of it as your database of information or content that you can pull from to add to your trips. When you create or add content to your library, you are creating documents. So each of these here is a unique document. And each document is then made up of pages. This structure helps you keep your content organized. When adding content from your library into your trips, you can choose to include an entire document, or with just one or more of the individual pages. This again gives you the flexibility to personalize and customize the information you present to each client. Advisors are saving destination content and recommendations, packing lists, visa reminders, contact information and embassy information, agency terms and conditions. So you can see that the application is broad because you can save any information you want to be able to reuse across your trips. So don't feel like you're pigeonholed into one particular category with the library. You really have a lot of flexibility with this. Essentially, anything that you can think to create can be added as a document or a page in your library. So now I'm going to go into one of the documents that I've already created called the Western Canada document. There we go. So on a high level, you can think of documents as collections of pages. For this sample, I have chosen to create a document where I will add and store all of my curated content and recommendations for Western Canada. How you organize your documents is completely up to your discretion. Instead of one document for Western Canada, I could have easily created a document for each city and region. For example, I could have created a whole document just for Calgary, a whole one for the Pacific Rim National Park, and more, and so on and so forth. There's no right way to organize your documents and pages. It comes down to what essentially works best for you. As mentioned, each document is a collection of pages to help you break up your topics. I should also note, but we'll get into this a little more later, that each page can include photos, videos, and clickable links. You can then include the entire document or just a selection of its pages into your trips and templates. You can preview all of the documents created in your company account. You can see some here are created by myself and some by other people, but you can only edit and delete the documents that you yourself have created. The exception is, of course, if you are the company administrator, in which case you can edit and delete any documents created by any user in your company. You also have the option to include a document created by someone else in your company into your trip, allowing your company to work together to produce shareable destination content and agency documentation. So even though the Getting Around Barcelona was created by someone other than myself, I can still use this document in my trips. You can also, just in a second, I'm going to go back to my document. You can also use documents outside of Umapped as well. You can create your documents in Umapped and then save them as a PDF for use anywhere in your business. This means that even if your clients prefer receiving a copy of the PDF with their trip, they can still benefit from the document in your library by downloading and then emailing the PDF copy of the document along with their trip. So you could do that just by going into your document and clicking the download PDF button from the left-hand side. So that's always an option if you really aren't the kind of person who likes to use the mobile app or likes using the web view. If you prefer sticking to paper, that's always a possibility with the library. Okay, so now that I'm in my document, I'm going to explore a little bit more about pages and all of the different interactive elements of pages by clicking on View Details for this Calgary page. So now let's talk a little bit more about what a page really is. You can think of pages like note segments on trips, as that's essentially what they are when you choose to add individual pages to a trip. The foundation of a page is the information contained in that text. As we discussed, this can be some destination content for a particular location, like this one is on Calgary, for example, or it can be a list of emergency contacts, or a packing reminder, or whatever else you find your travelers would benefit from having included in their trips. What makes pages particularly dynamic is the assortment of these interactive elements. You can add a location. So here I just have general Calgary, Alberta, a description of the page, You can add a clickable link. So this can be maybe to a blog post or to a TripAdvisor review if that's something you like. It's up to you. You can add videos. You can attach a photo. You can see here I only have the one, but I could add a couple different ones to this. And you can even attach files to a page, giving you the ability to really enhance your traveler's experience. For example, perhaps you might want to add a link directing your travelers to a review of a restaurant they're planning on going to. Or maybe you want to attach a PDF brochure for the park that they'll be visiting. So all of these things will be available for your travelers to use. So anything that you add in these interactive elements within the page will be visible to your clients. So now that we can see how you can create and organize content in your library, let's take a look at how you can incorporate the content of these pages and documents into your trips. When adding content to your trip, you can either elect to add your entire document to the trip or individual pages. So I'm going to go into a trip that I've already created called the Sample Trip to Western Canada. And first of all, I'm going to demonstrate how to add a whole document to a trip by adding that Western Canada document that we were just in to this trip. So if you want to include your entire document into your trip, which will include all of the different pages that you have added to the document, you can do so by navigating in your trip to Supporting Documents. And from this section, in the default tab, Content from Library, you can select Add Document, and then search for that particular document by entering the title into the keyword field. So I'm going to put in Western, brings up Western Canada. I'm going to click on the little checkbox and then add my document. You can attach as many documents as you'd like to a trip. Doing so will include all of the pages and information that you have included in your document, rather than making you pick and choose which pages are the most relevant to your clients. And of course, once you've added your document, clicking on the options icon to the right of it will give you the ability to preview what you just added. So if you just want to do a quick review, I'll just close that. And if you end up not wanting to include this document, you can always remove it from your trip entirely. But if you want to instead include just a couple pages from your document rather than the entire thing, you always have the opportunity to do just that. To do so, first navigate to Destination Content from the left navigation menu. Pages are added in a different area due to the fact that they are added to the main body of your itinerary, rather than being added as the supporting document to be accessed from a separate tab. So from this section, select the last tab, Add from Library, and add the title of the page that you want to add into the keyword field. So I'm going to look up Calgary, let's see, and then search. And then voila. So I can see the name of the page right there. The name of the document is presented right under that. So if I have a couple different pages and different documents with the same title, I can always distinguish between them by having the document right there, the document title, I should say, as well as the cover photo from that document. And then to add that to my trip, I'm just going to click on the copy button to the right of that. Again, you can attach as many pages as you'd like to your trip. Once you've clicked the copy button to the right of the page, go back to the main body of your itinerary, and you'll notice that your page has been added to the top of the trip as a note segment. Pages are always added to the top of the trip by default, but you still have the option to reorganize your page by clicking on View Details and then selecting the calendar icon. This will allow you to choose a new date on which to place the page. So let's just move this to the 4th. And then, voila, now it's on September 4th. Additionally, if you've previously attached a file to a page in one of your documents, such as a PDF or a Word document, you can easily add just that file attachment to your trip. So I'm just going to show you where I've added it. I'm going to go into Agency Documents, and then in Terms and Conditions, you can see that I've added a file. It's my Agency Terms and Conditions doc, a Word document. So let's say I just want to add this attachment to one of my trips. I'm going to go back to my dashboard, go back into the trip I was just in. So in this case, I'm going to add just that Agency Terms and Conditions file from my Agency Documents document to this trip by going to Supporting Documents, selecting the File Attachments, Attach File, but then instead of staying on Upload File, we're going to go to the second tab, Search Library. And then in the keyword field here, I'm going to add, what's this again? Agency Terms. There we go, that was it. So I've searched via a keyword, and then to add this file attachment, I'm just going to click the checkbox to the right and attach that file. And then voila. So that's how you can add just an attachment that you've added to a page in one of your documents. And again, clicking on this little options icon always gives me the ability to preview it, remove it from my trip altogether, or if I select edit, I can just edit the name of the attachment. So I can maybe just get rid of that .doc, just if I don't want it to look like a Word document, make it a little bit nicer and clean it up. You always have that option too. All right, so we've looked a little bit about how to add a page, how to add a document, and what they all are, and how to create them. So now let's take a look at how this content is displayed to your clients. So pages that you've added into the trip will be visible to your client within their day-by-day itinerary, and they will appear in the order that you've included them as part of the itinerary. So I'm just going to go preview the web view for my trip so that we can really get a good look at what my clients will see. Go in as myself. Voila. So if the page contains a lot of text, they can click on the More button to access the rest of the page. If a page has any photos attached or a location, those elements will also be accessible after clicking on More. So you can see that after clicking on More for Calgary, the location that I earlier added actually presents a little map that my travelers can interact with. And if I added anything with photos or videos, those would also come through. If you've added an entire document to the trip, you can access those by selecting the Documents tab from the top of the itinerary. The Documents tab will contain any files that you have attached, so PDFs and Word docs, as well as documents added from your library. This is important to note because to your clients, this section is also called Documents, but it can include both types of supporting information, attached files and documents from your library. To access any of these documents, your clients simply need to click Read and then scroll down through the document. You can see here I've got Haida Gui, I've got each of these, blah, blah, blah. And to interact with any of the pages within the document, you can click on the More in the bottom left corner. This is where you can access more photos, links, maps, and more page features. The information that you choose to include in a page is what your travelers invariably will be able to access when reviewing their trip. So make sure that your travelers have everything they need in order to have a fantastic experience. Going back into my trip, if you've previously created note segments in your trips that you'd like to reuse again in the future, you can always add those notes to an existing document. This way you never have to rewrite the same note again in the future, whether that's a simple reminder to your travelers about what to pack, or a more detailed piece of destination content. To save a note segment to a document, first go into your trip, whether it's a past trip or a present trip, because potentially you might have created a trip in the past that had some notes you really liked but didn't really know what to do with. And then select View Details on the segment in question. So for example, I created this Lake Louise little piece of destination content earlier today, but I just created it within my trip. From the very beginning, I clicked on, the little blue plus button, clicked on Note, and then created the Lake Louise. So I never actually added it to any of my documents. But while I was creating this trip, I realized, hey, Lake Louise, that's a really good piece of destination content. This could work perfectly in the document that I already have about Western Canada. So I might as well add it. So from there, when hovering over the title of the note, you'll notice that the first icon that appears to the right of the note title is a little plus mark, which reads Copy Note to Document when I hover over it. Essentially, this means that you'll be adding this note as a page to a document. Select this icon and then enter the name of the document in the keyword search. So I'm just going to write in Western Canada. There we go. Once you've located the correct document, select the circle to the right of the title, and then click Copy Note. Once you've done so, that note will now be available as a page in your document to use again in the future. I'll even verify this for you by going to my library, locating the document. Let's go down. I made it to Western Canada. And then scrolling down to view the recently added page, Lake Louise. And there we go. And then of course from here, because I added it to my document, I can always click View Details and then begin to add all of that good stuff that I added or that I'd like to add to the interactive qualities so that my travelers have a lot of stuff they can do. All right. One thing I'd also like to go over right now, since we've kind of looked at documents that I already had created, is what the process is for actually creating a document. It is quite straightforward, but we're going to go over it together just so that it's perfectly clear for every single person. So when you're initially creating your documents, you have two options. You can either click New Document from the left-hand side, or click on the add icon and click New Document. It's exactly the same. It's just one's in somewhere that's very abundantly clear, but the add icon will appear throughout this space, even when you're within a document. So it's best to just know that the add icon will always give you this option. So I'm going to click on New Document. And let's say I want to make this document all about Lake Louise, because that's going to be a star point in the trip that I'm preparing right now. So I'd like to have a really good, robust document all about Lake Louise, rather than just having my general document about Western Canada. You have the option, of course, to change the type of document. You can have it be a general document, which is just nondescript, not really have a type. But there's also the option for a company document, a country guide, city guide, a tour guide, and an activity guide. This really just helps you sort your documents so that when you're looking for them later, you can filter by all country guides or just city guides. Personally, I don't have a lot of documents in my library, so I'm just going to leave it as a general document. But if you have, a couple hundred different documents, it would be worthwhile to segment your document types so you always know what to look for. You have the option to make the document private if you'd like. I'm not going to, because I want it to be available to everybody in my company. And then this is just a description about the document in general. So I'm going to just say, this is a document about Lake Louise. And then I'm going to click New Document to save that document. All right, so much like with the trip, I always have that option to add a cover photo to my document. and this will appear in the client view. So I'm going to add one because I'd like my clients to have a nice, nice looking document in their trip. So I'm just going to go to unsplash.com because I am a peddler of this site, and I tell every single person I talk to use it. It's a really good photo website for free for commercial use photos. So I'm just going to click that one right there. Ooh, no, actually that one's cute. And then upload that. All right. So now that I've created the document, I have to start creating pages. You can't just have a document with nothing in it. It wouldn't really make sense. If you add the document to your trip, there won't be any content. So I get this question sometimes about, like, I've created my document now, how do I add it to my trip? What do I do next? You actually have to create your pages first, or else there's just nothing inside of your document. So I'm going to click on the add icon right there in the right-hand corner. And I have the option to either add a brand new page, which I'm going to do this time, but I can also add an existing page. And I'll do that in a second when I add that other Lake Louise page that I have in my other document. So I'm going to click on add a page to just start a brand new page. And I'm just going to call this, you know, itinerary for Lake Louise. Anything, I'm just going to do something simple like that. And then in this free text box here, you have quite a lot of options. You may have noticed in my agency documents, I actually created a little table for the payment schedule. It's really not relevant for this particular page that I'm making, but this gives you some flexibility in terms of what you're creating. Alternatively, I maybe could do a little what's it called, table here, and say day 1, day 2, day 3, just to really give it some structure. So this one will be arrive at Lake Louise. This will be maybe some kayaking, and then yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to fill this out, but this can really a free text field where you can begin to get creative and color this however you want. Maybe I'll just make these nice and bold, just to make my days really nice and bold. You can even change the format of the text to make it like a larger heading, a smaller heading, etc. There's a lot to do here. So feel free to check this out and you know, really experiment with the different elements that you'd like to present your information in. And then once it's done, you can click New Page to add that page. So now I have a document with a single page inside of it, but that's good. That means I'm getting started. I can create some more pages if I'd like, or I can actually, maybe let's add that Lake Louise page that I previously added to the Western Canada document by clicking on Add Existing Page. And then here in the keyword field, I'm going to write Lake Louise and search. And then right there, the one from Western Canada, Lake Louise, everything looks good. And if I'd like to add that to this document, I'm going to click Copy, because I'm essentially creating a copy. So even though I now have the Lake Louise page in this document, if I go back to my other Western Canada document, you'll notice that it's still part of this document. I haven't removed it. It just made a copy. So you can add this page to as many different documents as you'd like. All right. So now I've gone over a little bit more about actually creating your documents and your pages. Just want to go back into Lake Louise. And again, of course, if you have a PDF, if you have a client that really prefers PDF, you can always download that and save it as a PDF to send out. You can always preview it from here if you would like to see it the way that your clients will see it, all in one big shot. And actually, let's just go ahead and add this to my sample trip to Western Canada once again, so we can review again what that looks like. So I'm going to add the entire document by going to Supporting Documents. And then from Content from Library, I'm going to click Add a Document. I'm going to add Lake Louise as the keyword, select the checkbox to the right of that, and then add that document. But if I just wanted to add that itinerary that I made earlier, I'm going to go to Destination Content, Add from Library, In the keyword, I'm going to write itinerary for Lake Louise. I think that was the title I gave. And then copy. And if I go to my trip, you can see that that's right here at the top. But of course, I can always change the order by clicking View Details and just changing the calendar. Let's put this on the 2nd. Okay, voila. All right, so now that we've gone over, I think, the highest level of all of our pages, let's also talk a little bit about vendor upload, the one-time vendor upload option. So for those of you who have a database of your own documents that you've collected or created over time, perhaps saved in another system or in your CRM, we do offer a one-time upload for all of your documents. This will upload all of the information that you've collected into the trip publisher in one shot. Again, much like with vendors, if you were here with us last time, there is a particular format in which we need to receive your document information in order to perform this upload. And we should also note again that this is done at the company level. So if your company does have a list of agency documents or destination content, please reach out to us following this webinar at support@umapped.com to learn a little bit more about this process, what it means, and how the particular format that we need in order to get this all set up. Okay, so I think we've gone over the majority of everything. So over the course of this webinar, we've looked at how you can leverage all of the Umapped public database to create and manage content in your library, add content to your trip, save content from past trips to your library, and we've also explored all of the interactive elements of documents and pages to give your travelers a truly unique experience. So finally, we also looked at the details on how you can take advantage of our one-time CSV upload option for all of your existing documents. At this point, I'd like to move on to the live Q&A portion of this webinar because I know that that does take up quite a bit of time. I've always seen a lot of questions. And I would like to encourage everyone not only to ask questions about what you've seen during this session, but anything that you just generally have questions about. For anyone that can't stay for the Q&A, I just want to say thank you again for participating in today's Working Smart webinar. As mentioned, I will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to a recording and some further instructions regarding how you can get the CSV upload option, a little bit more about documents, and I may even share one of the documents that I've created today with everyone so that they can kind of get an idea about what things you can include and what it can look like. All right, I'm just gonna take a sip of water and then I'm gonna get right into all the questions because I can already see there's like 8. Okay. So Karina said the navigation is confusing with the new format. I always get lost when trying to add a page from a document. Will you quickly review again when to use supporting documents versus destination content to get the documents and then pages that need to be added? Okay, that's fine. I'm going to do this again, and I'll also again explain what the difference between the two is. So we're going to go back into my dashboard. We're going to go back into that sample trip to Western Canada. So we're going to start by adding an entire document into my trip. Now, because I'm adding an entire document, we're going to remember the word document and click on supporting documents from the left-hand side. Because I'm not adding a page, I'm not adding something from afar or W cities, I'm adding an entire document from a library. So from the first tab, content from library, I'm going to add document. This time, I'm going to add my agency document thing that I have. So this particular document contains a payment schedule, terms and conditions, a before you go reminder checklist, and a bunch of stuff like that. So I'm going to click on the checkbox to the right of the document and then add my document. So again, in this location, I'm adding an entire document, and that includes every single page that's in that document. I can't choose at this point to not show one page or to just show a couple of them. If I'm adding an entire document, then everything contained in that, including all of the interactive elements, including any files that I may have attached to pages in that document, will all be added to the trip. So make sure that if you're adding a whole document to your trip, that everything within that document is something you'd like your clients to see. If, for example, rather than adding every single thing in the agency documents, like if I preview it, maybe I do want to add the terms and conditions because that's something that's valuable to my business. And I do want to add the before you go checklist. But let's say I'm not too keen on adding the payment schedule for whatever reason I have. In the end, I just want to add terms and conditions and before you go. I'm going to remove that document. And instead, I'm going to add a page. Now, I'm going to destination content for pages because it's not a full document. It's only a particular piece of destination content or a particular page from my document that I'm adding. So just remember the terminology here. If you're adding a full document, you're going to supporting documents. But if you're just adding a single page, you're adding a piece of content to your trip. So we're going to go to Add from Library, which is that last tab over here. And then in the keyword field, I'm going to look up Before You Go, search, and there you go. That's the one. So I'm going to copy it into my trip. And before I leave, I'm also going to look up Terms and Conditions, search, and that's the right one. I can tell right there is the page name, and that's the document name right under that. And I'm going to copy that into my trip. Now, of course, like I mentioned a few times earlier, when you add a page, it does by default get added to the top of your trip, but you can always move that later on. It just goes to the top of your trip because there isn't a date that's already been attached to it, and the platform assumes that it's of an importance that would want it to be at the top of the trip. Okay, let's see. Herbert, can you please repeat where you add a page from in the menu? So like I just said in the other question, I know this was probably asked before I got to it, so I'm just going to reiterate again. If you're adding a page, because a page is a piece of content, not the whole document, you're going to destination content. So the two words that I like to remember in my head is if you're adding document, you go to supporting documents. If you're adding a page / content from your document, you're going to destination content. Okay, perfect. So Muffy asked, can you please go back to how you uploaded the photo from Unsplash? Okay, yeah, for sure. So to add a photo from a website like Unsplash, which by the way, Unsplash doesn't have any security features on their website that would, make it harder for me to find photos. So that's why it's so easy for me to find a photo for one of my documents, whatever, when I'm using Unsplash. It might be harder with other websites depending on security. I've mentioned this before in previous webinars. So it's always good to just double check. But personally, I really, really recommend using Unsplash if you just need a generic photo of a particular location, because they have a huge amount and they're all really, really quality and really easy to access. So I'm just going to go back here. So I'm in my document again. So let's say I wanted to replace that cover photo I have for my document. Just like with a trip, I'm going to click on the little pencil icon. I'm going to search the web, the second tab over here. In the website URL, I'm just going to put unsplash.com. And I think I'm going to look up Vancouver as the keyword search. Let's see what that brings up. Okay, and that must have been what I did before. Okay, so let's just see, is there anything I like here? Let's just add this bridge right here, upload photo. And then voila. Okay, next one. Linda asked, when are you going to tie into Beds Online? So Beds Online is actually one of our supported suppliers for email forwarding. It's not really part of the, let me just go to the list. Email forwarding. So it's not Beds Online isn't part of destination content or part of the library, but if you have a email confirmation from Beds Online, can't remember if it's part of this list or another list I have. 1 second, let me just get the other list. Open with. Traxo, auto parsing, it's online. Voila. So if you have an email confirmation from Meds Online, you can actually forward that directly into the trip publisher. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about that today because we can always schedule a little 30-minute one-on-one if anyone has any questions about this, or I can follow up with sending out this particular support page. But essentially from your email, from the same email as associated with your Umapped account, you would take that particular email confirmation and forward it to import@umapped.com. And then it'll appear in your booking inbox, much like this photo right here. So you click import bookings and it would appear right underneath here like this, so that you can easily access it just like you would with if you have the Sabre Live integration, something of the same sort, client base. You just click on those 3 little option icons right over here and then add it to your trip. Again, if anybody is interested, I really highly recommend going to our support portal, which is pub-support.umapped.com. And in the search bar here, just type in import bookings from email. And this will give you an attached list at the bottom of all of the different supported suppliers we have for email forwarding. Okay, so I'm just going to close that. Next question. So Stephanie asked, I'm not sure if we'll be discussing this later in the webinar or if I missed it, but how did you add a map to the document, or is this done under location? And then a follow-up question, can you add a map with a specific route? Sometimes we need to add one with driving directions and stops along the way. In the past, we've added it as a photo, but then the system auto-crops or zooms it, so it's hard to get it right. We prefer to always add it so it appears within the text versus a file or link, so it's easy to view and a client will miss it. And do you have any suggestions for that? So I'll answer that first question first. So you might have noticed that within both the pages in my web view and within the document itself, if I clicked on more, some of them had a little map, and that's because, yes, I enabled the location. So I'm going to go back here, and let's see, in Western Canada, was there any page that I didn't add a location to? Let's see, is there one? Oh, I didn't add one to Lake Louise, so this is a good time to do that as an example. So for Lake Louise, I clicked on View Details, and now I'm going to click on Add Location right here. Now this could be really anything. I'm not going to add a particular landmark. I'm just going to say Lake Louise in general. It's going to kind of pinpoint, I think, like the center of Lake Louise in that map. So I'm just going to add it. That auto-populates from Google Places, so every piece of information within Google Places will now be available. So that includes like the city, the state, country, latitude, longitude, all that good stuff. And I'm going to click Update. And now, if I refresh my web view, I'm going to reopen Western Canada and scroll down to my Lake Louise page right there. I'm going to select more so I can interact with those interactive elements, and then voila. So that's the little map. This will also happen within the main body of my itinerary. So you know that I already added Lake Louise as a page into this. I wonder if it's not going to be here. Let's see, on Calgary. Yeah, I had added Calgary as a page from my document into this trip. So I'm going to click on More. And that's where that little map comes up. Now this map doesn't have any directions on it. You can interact with it because it is from Google Places. So I can move around. I can even, zoom in, zoom out, put that little guy right there. Voila, it's just a regular old Google Places map. My particular recommendation for if you want to include photos with driving directions is kind of along the lines of what Stephanie was saying. So let's just do a quick Google. I'm just going to get some directions myself from here. Let's let's just say Lake Louise to Jasper. Just gonna open this up, directions. Now, if you find that it's cropping your photos too much in the trip publisher, my recommendation would be to save this side of the screen with the directions as a separate photo from this side of the screen with the actual map. So I'm going to take a screenshot for my Mac. I just click on Shift Command 4, and that lets me actually choose where I'm going to take the screenshot. So I'm taking a screenshot of that, and I'm taking a screenshot of that. And then I'm going to go back into my trip, back into the trip, sample trip to Western Canada. I personally, I'm going to create a new page, a note. So I'm going to say drive from Lake Louise to Jasper. What I'm doing right now, by the way, is by no means what you have to do. This is just my personal recommendation. So because for a note you do have to add text, I would say add just like the actual directions. I'm not going to do that, but actual directions down here. Add to trip. And then you can add your photos to that note because notes do allow photos. And I'm going to upload this, not this photo, desktop, do that photo, add, and then this photo from the other side of my screen, add, and then I just want to see what that will look like for my clients. Web view. And then if I click there, you can see both of these photos. It will get a little bit, because I saved a vertical photo, it does get a little stretched out. Probably the better thing to have done in this case would have made this picture the first one, because this one's a better shape. You want something that's, you know, longer than it is wide if you're adding it as the first photo, because if you make it the tall one like this, it will get a little squished. I don't know the dimensions for photos off by heart, but let me just look at the dimensions for that screenshot I just took, because that will usually give me an indication. So you want somewhere around 1,000 by 685 to 700 pixels, I would say. So I'm just gonna put that here in my notes so that everybody can see. So photo dimensions, this is a rough estimate, just like what I was looking at on my screen, what looked right. But again, this is by no means a definitive way to add your directions. This is just how I would do it, just because that first photo could be, like, actually, you know what, in this case, maybe let me reorder them, edit photos. I'm gonna reorder it, just to make that a little nicer. Refresh. And if I scroll down, that photo is a lot better in terms of size, and I can still click on the little photo icon at the bottom to scroll through that, and then also if I wanted to include this. Although, to be fair, I didn't have to include this photo. I could have just put the directions in the text. And then this photo is just the actual photo. And you can do multiple notes like this if you're going from Jasper to this town, from this town to this town, etc. You know, you can have multiple note segments in your trips that have this detailed out as they go. And that's what I would do for a road trip. I would have one from like Jasper to the first small town where they're stopping, or just like a smaller segment, and then have a second note after that. Okay, it's getting close to 1, so I'm going to answer a couple more questions just to make sure everybody's questions get answered before I have to jump to the intro webinar. But again, if there's any questions that myself or Barry don't get to today, I am going to follow up with you all personally afterwards. So don't worry about that. Okay. Irene asked, I understand documents can be uploaded, such as copies of e-tickets, copies of Manulife insurance policies. The issue is that I have to save the Manulife policy as a Word document or a PDF and then upload. Once uploaded, it still needs a password to open. If you have a password enabled on a Word document or a PDF, I think it's going to be retained even if you add it as a document. So my personal recommendation, Irene, would be to, if you want to get rid of the password, maybe create a copy of that PDF or Word document that doesn't have a password on it. But I'm pretty sure that if you've added any kind of password to that PDF or Word document, all of those features are going to be retained when you add it as an attachment, because it's still a Word document, it's still the same PDF, so it will have, I think, if I'm right, I will double check with someone on my dev team, but I think we've seen this before, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, if you added a password, it's going to stay there. All right, let's see some more. Lauren asked, can you upload multiple photos to a note or a vendor at one time? Do you always have to do it one by one? So actually, at the moment, it is one by one, but keep your eyes peeled because we do have a multi-photo upload improvement coming soon. I don't exactly have a timeline for when, but it is being worked on. So don't worry, we've gotten everybody's requests for multiple photo upload, and that is on its way. So you'll know, just keep an eye on I'm not even spelling the support portal right. That makes sense. So keep an eye on any of the communications that we've sent out in emails, because we always will mention in our product updates at the end of the month whether or not we've had any major updates or releases. You can also come to the support portal and check out under Trip Publisher release notes every single thing we've done. You can see I've written them for every release we've ever done, and this goes over the improvements, bug fixes, changes, anything that you need to know. So if you ever have a question, just come here and check it out, and it will give you a good comprehensive look at what we're looking at, what we're working on. All right, let's get a few more questions. So Barbara wanted to know, can you talk about the tags? So I assume by tags, you mean the tags. Let me just get an example here. Louise. So the tags here. For tags, for things like trips, templates, and the like, tags usually allow you to easily search for those vendors or those trips later on using the search bar. In this place, I haven't used tags very often with notes, so there are people that are more familiar with this than I am that use Umapped. But there's a series of codes, I think like last item, and there's a few others that I really just don't know off the top of my head because we typically don't use these anymore. I would say if you wanted to place your note in a particular place, to just do that from within the trip itself. But you can add a tag like last item. I think that's the right terminology. I could be wrong. I'll double check. But certain codes like last item or top of trip or something like that will save with this page, so that anytime I add this page to a trip later on, it'll always be added to the very bottom of my trip. I'm not exactly sure about the codes though, because I haven't used them pretty much ever, but I can look into that. Okay, let's see if there's any more. Let's see, I see that there's some in the chat, so I just want to give them a chance too. Oh, it's just no problem. Thank you, Stephanie and Alicia. Herbert wants to know, maybe this will be the last question I have today, but I will get back to anyone that doesn't already been answered. So Herbert wants to know, do you have any tips for creating a trip proposal which does not include certain specifics, as it's only to promote a trip? Yeah, so the first thing actually I would say is that if anybody's looking for like a really good look at how to create a proposal with the trip publisher, I actually do have a recording of a previous webinar I did that's entirely on that. So while I can give some tips right now, because I only have like 5 minutes left, it won't be as robust as that old webinar I did. So if you'd like that, please reach out. I can provide a copy for that. We might even put that in the support portal in the future for anybody. But my recommendations for proposals would be, like you may have noticed in that document that I created earlier, agency documents, there was a page called payment schedule. You can always create something like that. So I'll just open that up and show you what that looked like for me. It doesn't have to look like this for you, but this is just the way that we created it. So we had it laid out in a table like this with, the date, time of booking, 90 days, 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. That's just the way we structured it. It can always change. You can add multiple columns when you're using that little table thing that I showed earlier. But I would say add this to the top of your trip, just to have like a little payment plan, or maybe it could be something along the lines of, I'll just make one right off the top of my head. Let's do 3 columns, or no, 2 columns is fine. This could be hotel option 1 is X dollars per night. This could be hotel option 2, X dollars per night. This could be restaurant option number 1. That could be one option. Options or payments to trip. I'm just going to bring this to the very top of my trip by scrolling and dragging it. Dragging it up. So that would be one way. Another thing you can do is take advantage of the fact that for hotels and other things, there's a little pricing category within your actual hotel itself. So while I have all of the hotel information here, I can choose to add something like pricing. So this could be $1,400, $20. And so that when my travelers are looking through the web view, they notice this is the total price. And when you send this off as, you publish it, you can even leave a note here that says, this is a proposal. Take a look at the pricing on each option, something like that. Anyways, if you're interested in a much more comprehensive webinar than the few little tips I'm going to give right now, I can definitely send that out, and I might put that on our support portal. But those are just a couple different ideas I have off the top of my head. There's quite a lot of ways. So yeah. So anyone that's written in also in the chat right now that they'd like a copy, just know that I'm saving everything in the chat. So leave your comments now if you want that recording, because then I know who I can send it out to. Okay, so we're coming on to almost 1 p.m. So I am going to have to leave because I have another webinar right after this. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us for our 3rd session of Working Smart. I hope that this answered at least a good chunk of your questions about how to create and manage your content in your library. And like I mentioned, either tonight or tomorrow, we're going to send out a follow-up, which will include a recording of this webinar and a bunch of other links that I think would be really useful for everybody. So thank you again for joining us today. My name is Sophie. Leave me a question at support@umapped.com if you have any, and I'll reach out to all of you pretty shortly. So thank you again for joining, and take care.